For 15 long years, Charlotte Bennet dedicated herself to caring for Eleanor, her mother-in-law. The house nestled in the peaceful Cotswolds was filled with quiet sacrifice and relentless duty. Charlotte believed that her unwavering devotion would mend the fractures within their family and bring them peace. Yet, on the very day Eleanor was laid to rest, everything changed. James, her husband, spoke with a coldness that pierced her heart. Without warning and without explanation, he told her he wanted a divorce. Those words shattered the life Charlotte had built with love and loyalty. Shock rooted her to the spot. She swallowed the tears threatening to spill, but deep inside she knew she deserved more than a cold farewell. The house that once felt like a sanctuary now echoed with the silence of loss and betrayal. Charlotte's world had been torn apart in an instant. The words James uttered haunted her as she walked through the empty rooms of their once shared home. Each corner held memories, laughter from better days, whispered promises, and quiet moments of hope. Now, the walls seemed to close in on her, heavy with silence and unanswered questions. She spent the night restless, her mind racing through every conversation, every glance she had exchanged with James over the years. Had she missed the signs? Was there something hidden beneath his sudden coldness? The doubt gnawed at her, but she knew one thing: she could not simply accept this end. The following morning, Charlotte found herself drawn to Eleanor's belongings. Among the neatly stacked letters and photographs in an old wooden chest, she discovered a bundle of yellowed envelopes tied with a faded ribbon. The handwriting on the outside was unfamiliar but elegant. Curiosity overcame hesitation. As she carefully unfolded the letters, a story began to emerge, one of secrets, sacrifice, and betrayal that reached far beyond her own marriage. Eleanor had been a woman who guarded her past fiercely, hiding truths that could change everything Charlotte thought she knew about the family she married into. Meanwhile, James grew distant. He avoided her questions and dismissed her attempts to discuss the divorce. Yet, there was a tension in the air, a silent battle neither wanted to confront openly. Charlotte's closest friend, Clara Dawson, noticed the change and offered her steadfast support. Clara urged Charlotte to seek advice and to stand firm. With Clara's encouragement, Charlotte reached out to Mr. Henry Wallace, a family solicitor who had served the Bennets for decades. From their first meeting, Charlotte sensed that Mr. Wallace was more than just a lawyer. He held pieces of the puzzle that had been deliberately kept from her. The deeper Charlotte dug, the more she realized that Eleanor's illness and death were only part of a much larger story. There were hidden accounts, undisclosed properties, and a network of influence that James was desperate to keep out of Charlotte's reach. Amidst the unfolding mystery, Charlotte found her own strength growing. What began as a personal heartbreak was slowly turning into a fight for justice and truth. The quiet life she once knew had vanished, replaced by a storm of revelations that would challenge everything she believed about love, loyalty, and family. Charlotte could no longer ignore the growing tension between herself and James. Every attempt to speak with him was met with silence or cold dismissal. The man she had once loved seemed like a stranger, locked behind walls of secrets she could not penetrate. Yet, the letters she had found whispered a different story, one of long-buried truths and carefully guarded betrayals. Determined to understand, Charlotte returned to Eleanor's study. It was a room that smelled faintly of aged leather and forgotten memories. Here, she uncovered more than just dust-covered books. Tucked behind a loose panel in the bookshelf, she discovered a small ledger, pages filled with names, dates, and transactions that made little sense at first glance. With Clara's help, Charlotte began to piece together the significance of the ledger. It pointed to a secret business Eleanor had managed discreetly, one that was kept hidden from James and the rest of the family. This discovery contradicted everything Charlotte had believed about Eleanor's frailty and the family's financial situation. Meanwhile, James's behavior grew increasingly erratic. There were moments when his guard slipped, and Charlotte glimpsed the conflict raging beneath his stoic exterior. It became clear that whatever skeletons were buried in the past, James was not entirely free of their shadow. One afternoon, a chance meeting with Mr. Henry Wallace brought new revelations. The solicitor hinted at legal maneuvers and wills that had been rewritten in the months leading up to Eleanor's death. Documents were missing, and certain family members had been deliberately excluded from inheritance. As Charlotte delved deeper, she found herself entangled in a web of power struggles and family politics. The quiet Cotswolds countryside was merely a backdrop to a battle that stretched far beyond the boundaries of her home. Yet amidst the turmoil, Charlotte felt a shift within herself. The despair that had gripped her since James's announcement began to transform into resolve. She would not be cast aside like a forgotten piece of furniture. The fight ahead was not only for her rightful place but for the truth that had been buried beneath years of silence. The pieces were slowly coming together. Each secret uncovered only revealed another layer of complexity. Charlotte understood that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she was ready to face them head-on. Charlotte felt the weight of discovery pressing heavier upon her. The quiet facade of the Montgomery family was crumbling, revealing fractures that had long been concealed. Every new revelation pulled her deeper into a labyrinth of lies and deception. One evening, as rain drummed softly against the windowpanes, Charlotte found herself alone in the study once more. The ledger lay open before her, its pages illuminated by the flickering light of a solitary candle. She traced her fingers over the cryptic entries, accounts hidden under coded names, transfers made in secrecy, and unexplained withdrawals that suggested a hidden fortune. The betrayal cut deeper when Charlotte uncovered letters exchanged between James and an unknown correspondent. The tone was cold, businesslike, yet laced with undercurrents of resentment and fear. It was clear that James was not only hiding from Charlotte but also from someone else, perhaps a shadow from Eleanor's past. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at home grew colder. Agnes's passing, which should have united the family in grief, instead exposed the vast chasm between them. Daniel's absence became more frequent, his excuses thin and unconvincing. The man who had once promised loyalty now seemed a ghost, drifting further away. Desperate for answers, Charlotte reached out to Eleanor's old friend, Margaret Ellis, a woman known for her sharp mind and unwavering loyalty. Margaret was reluctant at first but eventually revealed a side of Eleanor that few had seen, a woman who had fought fiercely to protect her family's legacy, even if it meant making enemies. Through Margaret, Charlotte learned of a decades-old dispute involving property rights, hidden investments, and a rival who had sought to destroy everything Eleanor had built. The pieces began to fit together, the secret ledger, the missing documents, the cryptic letters, all threads in a tangled web of betrayal. Clara's support remained unwavering. She encouraged Charlotte to document everything, to prepare for a battle that was as much legal as it was personal. Together, they began to map out a strategy to reclaim what was rightfully Charlotte's. The nights grew long and restless as Charlotte wrestled with the truth. She questioned how much she had truly known about the man she married and the family she had pledged herself to. But within her, a fierce determination was kindling, a resolve to confront the shadows and emerge stronger. The road ahead was uncertain, but Charlotte was no longer willing to be a silent victim. The fight for justice had begun, and she was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The quiet of the Cotswolds seemed heavier now, burdened with secrets too long concealed. Charlotte's days were consumed by endless calls, meetings with lawyers, and late-night research into documents that felt more like puzzles than evidence. Each discovery peeled back another layer of deception woven tightly by those she once trusted. One afternoon, a letter arrived, anonymous and unmarked, slipped beneath her door. Its contents chilled her to the bone, warnings not to dig deeper, hints of dangerous consequences should she continue to pursue the truth. Yet, the silence she once craved had become unbearable. This letter was not enough to stop her. At the same time, James appeared less frequently in the village, his presence shrinking like a shadow retreating from the light. Rumors began to swirl, whispered in the local pub and along the village lanes. Some said he had taken refuge in London, others that he was negotiating something behind closed doors. But Charlotte knew better. He was running from a past that refused to stay buried. Determined to confront James, Charlotte arranged a meeting. It was tense and loaded with unspoken accusations. James remained guarded, but there was a flicker of something vulnerable beneath his mask. He admitted to decisions made under pressure, mistakes born of fear and desperation. Charlotte listened, torn between anger and a faint flicker of pity. But the damage was done. Years of lies had eroded their foundation beyond repair. There was no turning back. In the weeks that followed, Charlotte focused on rebuilding herself. She found strength in small victories, reclaiming forgotten assets, reconnecting with distant relatives who held pieces of the puzzle, and uncovering Eleanor's letters that spoke of hope and resilience. Her alliance with Clara proved invaluable. Together, they began assembling a dossier that could withstand scrutiny, a record not only of betrayal but of Charlotte's unwavering resolve. The night before the first hearing in court, Charlotte sat alone by the fireplace, reflecting on how far she had come. The road was long, the battle far from over, but for the first time, she felt the stirrings of control in her own life. Silence no longer meant surrender. It was the calm before the storm. The courtroom was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the warm hearths Charlotte had grown accustomed to in Cotswolds. Yet it was here, under the harsh glare of justice, that the true battle would unfold. The stakes were higher than ever, not just money or property, but the very integrity of a family torn apart by secrets. As the hearing began, Daniel entered with a steely expression, flanked by his legal team. His gaze met Charlotte's briefly, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his eyes. Charlotte held her ground, steady and composed, determined not to be intimidated. Evidence was presented, the hidden ledger, Eleanor's letters, testimonies from distant relatives. Each piece chipped away at the carefully constructed narrative Daniel had maintained for years. Witnesses spoke of long-suppressed tensions, of Agnes's final days clouded by suspicion and silence. Yet, beyond the courtroom drama, the emotional toll was palpable. Charlotte felt the weight of fractured loyalties, friends who hesitated to choose sides, family members caught between past grievances and present uncertainties. The very people she had hoped would support her seemed distant, unsure where their allegiance lay. One evening, Clara arrived with news. A former business associate of Daniel's had come forward, willing to testify about illicit deals and concealed assets. This breakthrough rekindled hope but also intensified the pressure. The shadow of betrayal loomed large, threatening to consume everything Charlotte held dear. Amidst the turmoil, Charlotte found solace in moments of quiet reflection. Walking the moors under a heavy sky, she drew strength from the land's enduring resilience. Like the ancient stones beneath her feet, she would withstand the storm. The trial stretched on, each day a test of endurance and courage. Charlotte's resolve hardened, fueled not just by a desire for justice but by a need to reclaim her own identity. The woman who had once been silenced was now a force to be reckoned with. The final chapter of this battle was yet unwritten, but Charlotte faced it with unyielding spirit, ready to confront whatever truths awaited. The deeper Charlotte delved into the tangled web of her family's history, the more she uncovered truths she had never imagined. Among Eleanor's letters, there was a hint of a betrayal older than she had suspected, a secret liaison that had shaped the very foundation of the Montgomery legacy. One rainy afternoon, Charlotte met with an elderly neighbor who had known Agnes long before Charlotte's marriage to Daniel. The woman spoke cautiously but revealed a story of forbidden love, heartbreak, and a hidden child. The revelation shook Charlotte to her core. Was her entire life built on a lie? Meanwhile, Daniel's demeanor began to crack under the pressure. Rumors of his financial dealings and personal indiscretions surfaced, casting shadows over his credibility. In court, his once confident facade showed signs of faltering, and Charlotte sensed that the truth was slowly unraveling. Yet, despite the turmoil, there were moments of unexpected kindness. Clara, steadfast and unwavering, stood by Charlotte's side through every setback. Their friendship, forged in hardship, became a source of comfort and strength. As the trial approached its climax, Charlotte found herself standing on the precipice of a new beginning. The legacy of silence and deception was finally being challenged, and the path ahead, though uncertain, promised liberation. Her voice, once muted by years of sacrifice, was now ready to speak volumes. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the verdict. Years of secrets, betrayals, and pain culminated in this moment of reckoning. Charlotte held her breath, feeling the weight of the past lift and a new future beckon. The judge ruled in Charlotte's favor, acknowledging the evidence of deception and awarding her a fair share of the estate and custody of the family's remaining affairs. Daniel's facade finally shattered in public, and the truth was no longer something he could control. Outside the courtroom, the cold wind of Cotswolds seemed less biting. Charlotte stepped into the fresh air, feeling the sting of tears but also a fierce sense of relief and empowerment. She had fought not just for justice, but for her own voice, her own life. In the days that followed, Charlotte began to rebuild. With Clara's support, she established a foundation to honor Agnes's memory, one dedicated to helping women trapped in silence and isolation. It was a tribute to the strength that had carried her through the darkest times. Charlotte understood that healing was not a straight path, but she no longer feared the unknown. The shadows of the past would always linger, but they no longer defined her. As she watched the sun rise over the rolling hills of Cotswolds, she knew this was her new dawn. A beginning forged in truth, resilience, and hope.